So far in 2025, only one vehicle in the Genesis lineup has managed to sell more units this year than they did last year, and it is this, the Genesis GV70. Now, you might have seen previous reviews that we've done of this model, and overall we've been fairly impressed with what this range has to offer, and it's also still reasonably priced compared to its rivals, which is why we have decided to take one on as a long-termer in the Chasing Cars garage for the next 6 months. Now, if you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you might remember that founder Tom Baker used to run a Genesis GV80, which is their large SUV, as a long-termer. And that came at a time where Genesis was really starting to hit the ground running and really starting to crank things up in how serious they were in solidifying themselves as a luxury brand. But right now, this really is the engine room of the Genesis operation. Now, the GV70 did get a pretty decent facelift at the back end of last year, and really the focus of that was to tidy up some of those bits that we didn't like so much about that vehicle and also enhance some of the bits that we did. It's still not perfect even after that update, but it is still fairly reasonably priced when you compare it to its rivals. Now, that doesn't mean it's cheap. This one, as it sits here with that beautiful twin-turbo V6 engine, is about $110,000. Such is the price of competing in the luxury segment, I'm afraid. But that is still about $30,000 cheaper than an M50 BMW X3. So certainly something to think about. Now, we've had this car for about a month already, and in today's video, we're going to highlight to you our first impressions, some potential concerns that we think might become more of an issue later on, and also what we plan to do with this car over our 6 months tenure. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and ideas on those things going forward. But before we jump into today's video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below if you want to see more content like this. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Now, with a luxury vehicle, the interior is obviously a very important area, and we'll get to that in just a second. But I just wanted to look at something which I like to call the handshake of the vehicle, because I think it's very important to the luxury segment because it's your first impression with it, and that starts with the key. See, I've got to say, I really don't like the key of the GV70. It feels plasticky, it's not very nice in your hand, it's super light, it feels like a cheap item because it probably is a cheap item. And I don't really think there's an excuse for that when we look elsewhere to sibling brands like Kia, as we're currently running a Kia EV3 as well as a long-term in the Chasing Cars garage. And the key for that model is just so much nicer in the hand. It feels more expensive. The buttons are nicer to press. Really, I just don't think that quite cuts it. But it's a small thing, but it doesn't just stop there. It's also to do with the door handles of this model, because I really don't like how they feel, and half the time the central locking is having an argument with me. It's locking, unlocking at times when I really don't want it to. Maybe it's just me, maybe I've got bad technique, but at the moment, that is really getting my goat. But enough of that. Let's jump to the inside. The interior of the GV70, I really do think speaks for itself. Just looking at it, it is a pretty beautiful space, and I quite enjoy a lot of the design elements. The facelift ushered in some things like this absolutely enormous screen, which goes right across from being a digital driver's display to also being a multimedia display. And there is a lot more play between these two screens than I do normally see in this segment. So that's very nice to see. For example, I do have Google Maps right in front of me in the digital driver's display, which is fantastic because you can just have your music over here and not worry about mucking it all up and things like that. So that's really great to see there. Now, the particular grade that we have gone for is the V6 with the Signature Sport. So pretty much the top spec you can go for if you're not going for the electric variant. It adds some things like some nicer stitching on the seats here, some nicer pedals down below. Generally, it's pretty much the same as the Signature, but overall, I think it's a really nice touch because it does match the athleticism of the V6 engine up the front, and it does make you feel like you're in something special. There really is just so much in the way of features inside this cabin. Bang & Olufsen sound system, this massive screen, as I said, heated and cooled seats, heated rear seats, heated steering wheel. The list really does just go on and on, but really I think the highlight for me has got to be just the usability. I really enjoy the fact that we do have a separate area down here for the climate controls. Yes, it is a touchscreen style interface, but they're always there. It's not disappearing into a touchscreen, and while we do have have a big touchscreen that's easy to touch up here as well. You can also control it using a rotary knob. And some parties out there like Mercedes-Benz, they might just go purely touch. Others out there, like sometimes BMW, though not in all of their models nowadays, and also Mazda, they have a bit of a combination of both. And for me, I do think that is the ideal outcome. It's also really worth touching on the amount of choice that you get with the GV70 when it comes to this interior. As I said before, this being the signature sport, you do get some extra nice features, but this is actually one of 4 colors that you can get for this particular trim level. And believe it or not, this red is arguably one of the least extroverted. There's some other ones you can go for with orange stitching and things like that. I'm not really a fan of them personally. I think this definitely looks the best. And this contrast between this black sections of the dash up here and the red down here, it might look a little bit too much, but I think when you're actually inside the vehicle, it does all come together quite nicely. But anyway, that's enough of the front. Let's go check out the back. Now we're jumping into the back seat of the GV70 now, because this is going to be a very important area of testing over the 6 months tenure, because this is going to be treated as my everyday family car. It's a mid-size SUV, and that's what a lot of people buy them to do. So it's very important that the back seats are solid overall, and so far I've been fairly impressed with them. Things like, for example, just look at how much room I've got. I'm 6 foot tall, heaps of room in front of my knees, heaps of toe room, heaps of headroom, even with this beautiful panoramic sunroof here. Overall, it's just a pretty good space back here, and it has meant that I've been able to put in a rearwards facing baby seat here and not compromise the driving position of my partner, who sits there and does actually sit fairly far back, which is really fantastic to see, and not something we see in all cars in this segment. Now, there are some other areas which I'm not really a big fan of, like the fact that we don't really have much in the way of under thigh support. These seat bases are just a little bit too low, and yes, we do have a transmission tunnel. This is a petrol vehicle, but there really is a lot in the way of amenities. I do like the fact that we've got these USB-C points down here. We also have heated outboard rear seats here. We also have a 3rd row climate control, which is always very nice to see. And of course, with sleeping kiddos in the back, I really do love the fact that we have pull-up sunshades. Always a really nice feature to have. The seats are also angle adjustable. That's pretty nice as well. But look, overall, I think this is a pretty good space so far. Though there is one thing I will note, and it's to do with quality. This is a really nice, lush feeling soft leather. But I have found that fitting baby seats in the back here, even with 2 layers of seat protectors here, there has been some indentation, and I'm a bit curious to see as to what's going to happen with this over time. You'll note that down here on this side where I put the rearwards facing seat, there is a bit of a mark down there, and there's also some marks that I have seen over the backrest of the chairs where you tighten up the belts. So you could say that there's a bit of a balance there between the lushness of the leather and the durability that it really needs to have to be a proper family car. Coming around to the boot, power tailgate, as you would expect. Button here that most people can't find upon their first inspection reveals a 542 litre boot, and it's a pretty good boot. It's a really nice size, nice and square, nice and deep. Personally, when I've had my single pram in here, I've been able to get it to sit just nicely here, which I can't do with all vehicles in this segment. So that's very nice indeed. And generally using this one as a family vehicle, it's just been very helpful. The boot is large, the boot is useful. And unlike many in this segment, you do still get a temporary spare wheel under the floor here, which is just lovely and it's always good to see. As far as amenities, things like some levers here to put down the seats, some 12-volt sockets, but really what matters to me the most is the fact that we just have a good amount of space. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love that twin-turbo V6 engine up the front of this vehicle, but it does have a little bit of a drawback that I've noticed in my first month with this car, and that is fuel consumption. This thing really loves to drink. I'm seeing about 12 litres per 100 Ks at the moment. That is using 98 RON fuel exclusively, though you can use 95 if you do wish, but that's just a bit of a personal philosophy myself. Now, that is mainly urban driving, and I am keen to do a bit more highway driving to try and see what the more realistic combined consumption figure is over that longer term. So more investigation needed there. But before you say that, you know, that's probably the price of having a high performance engine, well, look over to its rivals like the Audi SQ5 and the BMW X3 M50. Those are pretty high performance engines, and also they drink significantly less, at least on paper. So I am keen to see a little bit more work in that that space to see what we come to at the end of our 6 months in terms of figures. So what next for the Genesis GV70? Well, first and foremost, I just want to get a lot of Ks under the tires of this vehicle. We were very fortunate actually in that it arrived in our garage with about 6,000 Ks already on the clock. And as per tradition at Chasing Cars, we want to do at least 10,000 Ks during our 6-month tenure. In that time, I want to take this thing on some fun roads, some highways, some weekends away, test it in the city where it's a nightmare to park, all those challenging things that you guys are actually going to do in your everyday life. And I'm very curious to see how it all comes together. We're also going to jump into some other variants of the GV70. There's actually a fully electric version of this exact car, which I'm very keen to try out as well. Very fast, dual motor, really gets out of its way plenty quick. And that is saying something considering that this thing is already pretty darn quick. And of course, further down the range, we also have the 2.5 litre 4-cylinder turbo. I'm keen to jump into that one because it's a little bit more affordable and we have had some problems with it in the past, but maybe with this recent facelift, they have ironed out some of those kinks. And of course, somewhere along the line, we definitely have to do a comparison against some of the rivals for this vehicle. Let me know in the comment section below what you want those vehicles to be. But for now, that's all. Thank you so much for watching Chasing Cars.